Chapter 51. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Anything is possible. How about, if it's really over, just follow me. Su Zhan looked at Simmons seriously. Simmons was stunned for a moment, then nodded and said, if that happens one day, maybe. I will agree. Then it's settled. Su Zhan smiled with satisfaction and said, it's getting late, so you should go to bed early. There's no rush to study this super potion anyway. Well, I'll go take a rest in a minute. Good night then. Su Zhan tentatively approached Simmons, and when he saw that she didn't resist, he kissed her on the cheek. Good night. Simmons said with a blush. After leaving the laboratory, Su Zhan returned to his room to rest. In a blink of an eye, 3 days passed. There were no tasks in the past 3 days. Su Zhan was basically either swallowing ether particles, studying fear crystals, or accompanying Sky or Simmons, especially Simmons. I have to say that Simmons is indeed very powerful. She is beautiful, has a good figure, and a likable personality. The most important thing is that her professional level is high enough. This is why Su Zhan wants her to follow him. In 3 days, she had already made initial progress, and basically understood the formula, efficacy, etc. of the superpower potion. Because the superpowers obtained after taking this superpower potion are very random, she actually started researching this aspect, trying to find out the rules to ensure that she can get the desired ability after taking it. Although she has a preliminary direction and no clue yet, it is enough to prove her talent and ability. After staying comfortably for 3 days, Su Zhan was ready to go to the island base to have a look. Although they could rest assured that the matter was left to Huan Huan, after all, it was their own base and they couldn't completely take charge of it. You want to go out? Just as Su Zhan was about to leave, Coulson ran out from nowhere and asked. Su Zhan was speechless. I said, you haven't been staring at me, right? Yes. Coulson nodded and admitted, smiling, and said, I was worried that you would suddenly run away. Didn't you promise me that you could take me to visit your spaceship? Now is not a good time. It's a mess over there. If you want, how about I invite you to visit after everything is settled there? Su Zhan said. Coulson shrugged. Okay, let's talk about it next time. Okay, just contact me if you need anything. Chapter 0066 Little Pepper. After leaving the plane, Su Zhan flew all the way. Under his constant urging, his speed reached the speed of sound. It didn't take long for him to appear above the islands on the west coast. From a high position, you can clearly see the lively scene on the island. Construction is going on everywhere, and teleporters are opening everywhere to facilitate transportation. Su Zhan fell slowly. Boss, you're here. Seeing Su Zhan falling down, Huan Huan said hurriedly. Seeing the slight sweat on his forehead and temples, Su Zhan said with concern, don't work too hard. It's okay, this can speed up the process and also exercise my abilities. Huan Huan wiped his sweat and said nonchalantly. How's the progress? Su Zhan knew that even though Huan Huan seemed to be very well behaved and quiet in front of him, he was actually very stubborn, so he stopped trying to persuade him and instead asked about the progress. According to Su Zhan's idea, he not only wanted to build a building on the island, but the most important thing was to build it underground. Therefore, the amount of engineering involved is still very large. It's not bad. If everything goes well, it should be completed in half a year. Xuanfang thought for a while and replied, half a year. It seems a little slow, but just by flashing the 3 of them, plus the hired workers, it really couldn't go any faster. It seems that I have to stay and help. Boss, someone seems to be coming. Just as he was thinking about it, Huan Huan suddenly said. Su Zhan looked up and saw a light flashing in the distance. Iron Man. Why is he here? Su Zhan frowned slightly. Isn't this guy still obsessed with the Dark Elf spaceship? Go and ask the Dark Elves whether the spacecraft's technology can be easily cracked. Su Zhan whispered to Shuang, who nodded, opened the portal and went directly to find the Dark Elves. At this time, Iron Man had arrived on top of his head and slowly fell down. His posture looked a bit shaky and he looked unskilled. Why are you here? Don't tell me it's for the Dark Elf spaceship. If so, I can only say that your trip will be in vain. Su-Jean looked at Iron Man, who landed on the ground and curled his lips. The helmet of the steel suit opened, but the person inside was not Tony, but Pepper. Seeing her coming out of the steel suit unskillfully, Su-Jean was a little confused. What's happening here? Sorry, I thought it was Tony. Su-Jean said in surprise. Pepper smiled awkwardly and waved her hands. It's okay, it's okay. By the way, are you here looking for me? Su-Jean asked. Pepper nodded. Yes, I came here specially when I knew you were here. I know Tony has been thinking about your spaceship, but this time I came as a private person. Private identity? Aren't you afraid that Tony will be jealous if you come to me like this? Su-Jean joked with a smile, wondering why Pepper came to see him, or is it a private identity? Pepper suddenly said seriously, Mr. Su-Jean, I think you may have misunderstood my relationship with Tony. I am her assistant, but I am not her girlfriend. Isn't it? Su-Jean was really surprised. Seeing how much Tony cared about Pepper before, he thought they were a couple, but now it seems that they are not. Excuse me, haven't you ever had a single intimate act? Of course not. I'm an assistant, not his girlfriend. Pepper said very seriously, it's just that I've known him for many years, so I can be considered a friend regardless of my assistant status, but it's definitely limited to that. In fact, I have also been looking for a new assistant for her recently, but there is currently no suitable one. Hey, you see why I am telling you this? It is like this, I am here to thank you. Thank me? Because of the extremist virus? Yes. It's not necessary. Didn't I say it before? I was here to get the extremist virus. Su-Jean didn't expect that little Pepper would still remember it and come over to thank him. But for me, it's a life-saving grace. So I have to thank you. Pepper insisted, then hesitated for a moment and said, it's just that I don't know how to repay you for your life-saving grace. It's not easy. You just have to commit yourself to it. Su-Jean said jokingly. Little Pepper was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't expect Su-Jean to say that. Chapter 52. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Su-Jean followed up and said, of course, I'm joking. In fact, if you really want to thank me, why not do me a favor? You say. Tony should still have a lot of steel suits, and they can also be controlled remotely. As you can see, I am under construction here. I want to speed up the progress, but I don't have enough manpower, so. I'll tell him, little Pepper said quickly. Thank you very much. It doesn't matter if he refuses. I'll find another way. Wait for my news. After finishing speaking, little Pepper put on the steel suit, then heard a bang and took off into the air. Su-Jean silently released the energy shield. When the smoke cleared, he couldn't help but muttered, it seems that whether it is a car or a steel suit, female drivers are very scary. Chapter 0067. Does little Pepper want to stay? Boss, the Dark Elf said that the technology on the spaceship is at least 100 years ahead of Earth's technology. Unless the spacecraft is completely dissected, there is no need to worry about the technology being stolen. Flicker came to Su-Jean's side and whispered. Su-Jean nodded, and Pepper went to Tony for help. If Tony was willing to send out the Steel Legion, the project here would indeed go much faster, but he didn't think Tony would agree, or agree unconditionally, since the Dark Elf said that the technology of the spaceship was not worried about being stolen, then he could use this as a condition to get benefits back from Tony. For now, let's wait and see the news about little Pepper. Turning around, Su-Jean followed to help. He directly transformed an excavator and began to control it. At the same time, he also released his telekinesis to help transport things. With the addition of Su-Jean, the progress has been much faster. After all, Su-Jean can use the ether ring to transform into whatever he needs. This improves the efficiency by more than a tiny bit. Unconsciously, it was getting late and the workers had stopped working and were getting ready to rest, because this is a long-term job, and it is naturally impossible for these artificial workers to live in the spaceship. They have set up a resting place on the island early, and food and drink are all available. After all, they dare to come to work. It's not easy anymore. Alien spaceships, mutants, and superpowers, these are things that ordinary workers dare not come into contact with. Su Zhan's name is not that popular and resounding. He is not even well known among ordinary people, far less than Iron Man, Captain America, and so on. Therefore, in order to allow them to work here with peace of mind, they have indeed made a lot of preparations. Su Zhan had no intention of leaving, so he turned back to his room on the spaceship and prepared to rest. Not long after he came in, he heard a knock on the door, and then Huan came back with a lot of takeout. Chinese food? Did you go out to buy it? Su Zhan was a little surprised. Although food was prepared on the island, there was absolutely no Chinese food. Flickering nodded and said, "Yeah, I don't know what you like to eat, boss. Chinese food should be fine, right?" "Of course. Thank you for your hard work." Su Zhan took it over with a smile and opened it one by one. "Then boss, please take it easy, I'm going out first," Shuang said, turned around and left. Su Zhan wanted to ask her to stay and eat together, but Huan left too fast. Speaking of which, Huan is really hardworking and never complains. It's really good to have such a subordinate. Especially that face. Every time I look at it, I feel like looking at Mr. Fan, sometimes quite impulsively. It can be said that Chinese food is spread all over the world and is very popular everywhere. However, in order to conform to local tastes, it is somewhat spoiled and not so pure. Su Zhan simply ate some to fill his stomach, and then prepared to continue devouring ether particles. If he could completely swallow the ether particles, it would be much easier to build a base. This is a reality gem. As long as the power is strong enough, it can change the strength. It is not impossible for a base to appear out of thin air, but now, he can't do it yet. Just as he was about to start absorbing, Su Zhan heard a knock on the door, followed by Shuang. "Boss!" Huan shouted and stepped aside. Only then did Su Zhan realize that there was another person behind her, Little Pepper. "Coming. It doesn't seem to be going well." Seeing the apologetic and angry look on Little Pepper's face, Su Zhan had already guessed that it would not be so smooth when she went back to find Tony for help. Twinkle turned and left. Pepper came over and said apologetically, "Sorry, I thought Tony would agree, but I didn't expect him to be so stingy. I had a fight with him. I've had enough of his temper. I'm his assistant, not his mother. Tony's character is really not that likable. It's okay. In fact, I've said it before, you really don't need to thank me specifically." Su Zhan didn't take it to heart and said with relief. Pepper shook his head, "I have resigned. If you don't mind, I want to stay and help." "Oh?" It looked like the two had a very heated argument, and Pepper actually resigned. Speaking of which, Pepper's business ability is still very strong. Tony basically doesn't care about anything. The company is managed by Little Pepper, and now that she is here to help, there is no reason for Su Zhan to refuse. "Of course you want to stay. Although I haven't set up any company, you can see that this is the base for my development. I will definitely need talents from all aspects to help me manage it in the future. It would be best to have your help." Su Zhan extended his hand and welcomed him. Let me think about it, but before the base is built, I will stay here to help," Little Pepper said hesitantly. "No problem. But as you can see here, it's a bit shabby. I'll arrange a room for you to rest for now. If you need anything, just tell Shuang. Although she didn't promise to really stay, she believed that as long as we got along with each other for a long time, she could let her stay willingly. Su Zhan took her out and arranged a room for her. Chapter 0068 Meeting Natasha by chance. Night falls quietly, the island is quiet, and the sea breeze blows by, bringing a slight coolness. Su Zhan felt slightly uncomfortable. Although he could swallow the ether particles without any hindrance, it lasted too long and his body couldn't bear it. Just like his ability to devour, if he devours too much, his body will be unable to maintain balance and will easily lose control. When it swallows, while swallowing the energy of ether particles, the body will automatically make adjustments to remove the side effects and effects of the swallowed energy on the body. This has a certain frequency. Beyond this frequency, the speed of transformation will decrease. If you cannot keep up with the speed of devouring and destroy the balance, problems will naturally occur. He could now feel something about to stir in his body, which was not so peaceful. He stood up and walked to the door. The door opened automatically. Su Zhan came out of the room and walked out of the spaceship. The evening breeze blew on his face, and Su Zhan walked on the island. This was his first time to appreciate the night view of the island. It was indeed beautiful, completely different from what he saw during the day. Inexplicably, Su Zhan suddenly wanted to drink a few drinks, so his body rose into the air and light streaked across the night sky. When he landed, he had already appeared in the bustling city. Surrounded by lights and entertainment, for many people, nightlife has just begun. Su Zhan was walking on the street to find a bar. Along the way, he saw many women with heavy makeup and revealing clothes standing on the street, flirting with the passing men from time to time. Obviously, they are working, but it is a very special job. When Su Zhan came over, there were two women trying to strike up a conversation with him, but Su Zhan ignored them. I found a nearby bar that looked good and went in. The lights inside were slightly dim and there were not too many people. It was lively without making people feel noisy. I looked around and was about to find a place to sit down, but something happened in the corner of my eye. Suddenly I saw an acquaintance standing in the corner by the window. Su Zhan was a little surprised. He didn't expect to see her here, and she obviously didn't expect to meet Su Zhan here either. Her expression was very surprised. Su Zhan first walked to the bar and ordered a few bottles of beer, then walked over with them. Chapter 53. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. I really didn't expect to meet you here. Su Zhan sat down and said casually, "Do you know what I thought of when I saw you? Maybe, tonight will be an unforgettable night." Natasha said jokingly, "Yes, this acquaintance is Natasha." Black leather pants, a black t-shirt, and a black leather jacket look cool and charming. Su Zhan shook his head. "No, I was thinking that shield was too powerful. I just made a temporary decision and found a bar at random, but you arrived before me. Do you think I'm here specifically to wait for you?" Natasha raised her eyebrows and shook her head. "Then you guessed wrong, I'm not here for you." "Oh." Su Zhan opened the beer and handed it over, and asked casually and curiously, "Why is that? Don't tell me that you are really just here to drink." After saying that, Su Zhan bumped the wine bottles with Natasha and took a sip. "What about you?" Natasha asked instead of answering. "Me? I just came here to drink," Su Zhan said casually. "Did you see the people at the table on the left? Pay attention to the bag on the chair." Natasha suddenly whispered. Su Zhan glanced casually to the left. There were 3 young people drinking there, 2 men and 1 woman. There was a travel bag on the chair. There was something like a stick coming out of the zipper. It was too long, so it couldn't be completely removed. "Put it in your travel bag. It seems that you are here not just for drinking." Su Zhan turned his head and said to Natasha, "Will me being here delay your mission? How about, should I find another bar?" Natasha rolled her eyes at him angrily and said, "You've already come, and you still want to leave. Do you know what the stick in that bag is? That stick is very special, and it seems to contain a kind of anger that makes people violent. Magic. This group has killed several innocent people. My mission is to get the stick and figure out its origin. This shouldn't be difficult for you, right?" Su Zhan said noncommittally. "With your help, wouldn't I be more confident? Don't forget, after all, you are also a consultant of S.H.I.E.L.D. now. Although this title has no practical meaning, you can't just sit back and watch, right?" Natasha asked with raised eyebrows. "I won't do anything that's not beneficial." Su Zhan shook his head. "I'm just here for a drink. How about you do me this favor and let's find a quiet place to have a drink after this?" Natasha looked at him and asked with pleading eyes. Although he knew that Natasha didn't need his help at all, Su Zhan still couldn't refuse her like this. Especially if Roa was referring to something, he knew clearly that it couldn't be anything else but just drinking. but people couldn't help but think about it. "What are you going to do?" Su-Jean asked in a low voice. Natasha smiled brightly. "You agreed. This is not the right place to take action. Just wait for them to leave later and find a place to take action. The main target is the stick." "New." Su-Jean responded lazily, and then drank the wine leisurely. Although it was just a glance, Su-Jean already recognized what the stick was. "I originally thought that they would have to follow Coulson to meet them, but I didn't expect that Natasha had already paid attention first. It's a coincidence that I just went out for a ride and had a drink when I encountered this kind of thing. It seems that this thing is destined to belong to me. As for helping Natasha, it's just a piece of cake. Now that they have met, he will take action even if Natasha doesn't say anything. However, this thing will definitely not be given to her, or to S.H.I.E.L.D. "How's your base doing?" Natasha asked casually while drinking. "It's not that easy to start something from scratch. I'm wondering whether I should find more helpers to help. It might be faster. If you talk to Nick Fury, he'll be happy to help. The problem is I don't want to. Let Nick Fury help. Forget it. It would be weird if he didn't do anything in the base, not to mention, it's not that easy to get him to help." Chapter 0069 Natasha's Changes. They're out. The two of them were drinking and chatting. They were handsome men and beautiful women. No one would doubt their identities. At this time, Natasha whispered something, and the three people at the table far away had already picked up their bags and stood up to leave. "Let's go too." Su-Jean stood up as he spoke. Natasha smiled sweetly and stood up, then took Su-Jean's arm and leaned almost half of her body against him, very fragrant and soft. Also very flexible. She knew that Natasha didn't mean it, but she couldn't help it. Who made her bust stand out so much and hug her so tightly that it was hard to even feel it. "Don't think too much." Natasha seemed to know what Su-Jean was thinking, so she whispered something, and walked out of the bar with her arm on his face. Outside the bar, the two men and one woman who came out had already walked to a car next to them and seemed ready to drive away. "Are you driving?" Su-Jean asked in a low voice. "No, what about you?" Natasha shook her head and asked nonsense. Obviously, Su-Jean didn't drive either. "I saw two men and one woman getting into the car and driving away." Su-Jean took Natasha's arm and walked directly to a remote alley nearby. Although Natasha was curious, she didn't ask. She knew that Su-Jean must have some plans. "Hold me." Coming to the alley, Su-Jean whispered. Natasha simply hugged Su-Jean's waist and pressed her whole body against him. "Then what?" Natasha asked. Su-Jean smiled. "Then I want to help you pretend to be bee and help you fly." As soon as he finished speaking, a ball of energy appeared around him, enveloping him and Natasha. When Natasha was curious, he jumped into the air and chased directly in the direction of the car. "What's this?" Natasha found that she was not affected at all. She neither felt strong airflow nor any discomfort. If the scenery below was not constantly retreating and changing, Natasha would have thought she was not flying. "What kind of ability do you have? This energy feels so special." Natasha was a little curious. Could it be that Su-Jean had swallowed up some special ability? However, he didn't hear anything about Su-Jean's recent actions, except, leaving the Earth. "This is green light energy." Su-Jean shook the etheric light ring on his finger. "It's this ring. It's called the Green Lantern Ring. It can be transformed into various forms through human willpower, or imagination." Green Lantern Ring? Did you get this outside the Earth? Chapter 54. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Well, that's right," Su-Jean responded, looking down at the car as it slowly drove to the parking lot of a small hotel, and then entered the hotel. After the two of them landed, Su-Jean removed his energy, looked at the inn and said to Natasha, "What are you going to do next? Are you going to go in directly, or will we talk about it later when we have a chance?" "Just go in." Originally, Natasha was ready to take action directly, but now that there was Su-Jean, she was more confident. the two walked into the small hotel arm in arm and quickly found the room where the 2 men and 1 woman were. Standing at the door, Su-Jean couldn't help but said softly, "You are quite good at playing. Can we share a room with 3 people? Natasha rolled her eyes at him and whispered, "I realize that you are really a bit wretched. Men, it's normal. If you are serious, it would be hypocritical, wouldn't it?" Su-Jean said disapprovingly. Natasha snorted and knocked on the door with her hand. Boom, boom, boom. There was a knock on the door, and a man's impatient voice came from inside. "Who is it?" Natasha said nothing and continued to knock on the door. Footsteps were heard, followed by the door opening. A man opened the door and looked at Su-Jean and Natasha with a bad tone. "Who are you?" Natasha smiled brightly, suddenly grabbed the man's wrist, and then pushed him hard with her knees. In an instant, the man slowly fell to the ground with a painful expression, and Su-Jean couldn't help but grin. Just looking at it made him feel pain. This guy was so unlucky that he probably wouldn't be able to use it anymore. Natasha and Su-Jean entered, and the 2 people in the room also realized that something was wrong. The man instantly took out the stick from his backpack. The moment he held the stick, he could feel his temperament change instantly, especially ferocious and angry. With a roar, he rushed towards Natasha and hit her directly with the stick. Natasha bent down, holding one hand on the ground, raised her left leg and kicked his wrist. He grunted in pain, and the stick fell to the ground instantly. Natasha caught the stick easily. "Depend on," Su-Jean couldn't help but cursed in a low voice. He didn't expect Natasha's movements to be so crisp, nor did he expect that the man was so weak. He was clearly holding a stick, but Natasha snatched it away with just one move. With the stick in hand, Natasha suddenly roared hysterically, and her eyes became extremely violent. He waved his hand and hit the person's shoulder with the stick. Then he turned around and hit the person's chin with a leg, instantly kicking her into the air. Before she could use up all her strength, Natasha was facing her. Kicked him in the stomach. Plop. The man was kicked to the wall in an instant. The wall shook for a moment, and then he lay down softly. Natasha turned her head and looked at the woman. The woman seemed frightened and hurriedly ran when she saw Natasha rushing toward her. Natasha snorted and prepared to catch up, but suddenly stopped. "Take him and leave quickly," Su-Jean shouted to the woman. The woman was stunned for a moment, but finally turned around and helped the man who was knocked down, and then ran out in a hurry. As for the one who was put down before, although the woman also wanted to take him away, she was powerless. It was Su-Jean who released his telekinesis and pulled him out directly. Boom! Su-Jean closed the door and looked at Natasha, who was struggling ferociously. Let me. Natasha gritted her teeth and shouted. "You are controlled by anger, let it go," Su-Jean said with a sigh. He knew the power of this stick, and it could definitely leave side effects on people. "I said, let me go." Natasha couldn't listen to Su-Jean's words at all, so she shouted loudly, shook off his mind control, and then hit Su-Jean with a stick. Su-Jean didn't move, but an energy shield suddenly appeared in front of him to block the stick. The shield instantly turned into a hand and grabbed Natasha's wrist. Humph! Natasha groaned and couldn't help but let go of the stick. Goyalu, the stick fell to the ground and rolled aside, and Natasha fell limply to the ground. Chapter 0070, Heartache, Pity, Harsh Words. Su-Jean looked at the stick on the ground. It was obvious that this stick was not a whole, but seemed to be a part of it. The lines on it were very special, and it looked like it should be the bottom part. Natasha didn't know what it was, but Su-Jean knew it very well. This thing is the cane of an Asgardian berserker. As long as you hold it, you will transform into a berserker and your strength will be greatly improved. One berserker is equivalent to 10 ordinary warriors. Of course, they are all Asgardians. Naturally, this war cane cannot be compared to Thor's hammer, but it is also an Asgardian weapon, and its power is much stronger than the weapons on Earth. Especially, it should contain dark magic, which can not only make people fall into anger. In a violent state, it can also trigger and deepen inner fear. Even Asgardians cannot guarantee perfect control, otherwise, they would not have been split up and hidden in the first place. Staring at the crazy palm, Su Zhan had a faint impulse and wanted to give it a try. Bending down and slowly reaching out his hand, Su Zhan took a deep breath and suddenly grabbed it. At that moment, there seemed to be a special power pouring into his body, making him unable to help but become angry and manic, as if he wanted to destroy everything he saw. He knew that this was the magic on the cane. He controlled the restlessness and slowly calmed himself down. Strength. Very powerful, he could feel powerful power flowing through his body, which was at least 2 or 3 times stronger than before. However, he didn't feel the fear, and there was nothing unusual except for the restlessness of anger. Is it because my body can still resist the magical power? Or is it because the spiritual barrier of the lamp ring prevents the magical invasion of the cane? Su Zhan was a little surprised, but he didn't think much about it. No matter what the reason was, it was always a good thing. It can improve your strength without worrying about side effects. This is good stuff. Su Zhan smoothly received it into the system space, and then looked at Natasha. Natasha seemed to have fainted while lying on the ground. Su Zhan picked her up and put her on the bed. He looked at her, who had obviously fainted, but had a fearful expression on her face. He didn't know what she saw. It must be those bad memories from the past, right? Chapter 55. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Regarding the memory of the Red Room, it should be a past that Natasha will never forget in her life. There, she received hellish training that allowed her to become the Black Widow. This side effect may not disappear in a short time unless she overcomes her fear. This woman is really brave. Su Zhan couldn't help but shake his head. Even though Natasha usually seemed very strong, she looked heartbroken and pitiful now. Bang bang bang, someone knocked on the door, and then the door was pushed open, and the owner of the small hotel walked in. You don't have to worry about anything. We're staying in this room temporarily. I can guarantee that you won't be in trouble. The money is yours. There was quite a commotion just now. It's normal for the boss to come over to check on the situation. Before he could speak, Su Zhan spoke in an unquestionable tone, and then threw out a large amount of money. The owner of the hotel was also very sensible. He took the money, turned around and left, and closed the door without saying a word. Watching him close the door, Su Zhan was about to turn his head to look at Natasha, but suddenly felt his hand being grabbed. Are you awake? Su Zhan turned his head and Natasha had already opened her eyes. Are you okay? How do you feel? Natasha shook her head and said nothing. She looked at Su Zhan with those scared eyes and felt uncomfortable. Don't worry, you were affected by the cane and you will be fine soon. No matter what you think or see, it has happened before, so there is no need to be afraid. I will get you a bottle of water, just drink some water and calm down. After saying that, Su Zhan stood up and was about to get her a bottle of water. Who knew that as soon as he stood up, he was grabbed by Natasha, and the strength was not small. Su Zhan, she didn't expect that Natasha would suddenly exert force, and she fell down directly on top of Natasha. Ouch! Su Zhan snorted and hurriedly wanted to get up, but Natasha held on to him. Every time he went up and down, not only did he act rudely again, but he also made the two people's mouths touch each other just right. The smell of blood spread instantly. Su Zhan felt some pain at the corner of his mouth. When he lowered his head, he saw that the corner of Natasha's mouth seemed to be broken. Let me go first, don't be afraid, I won't leave. Knowing that Natasha was dragging him because of fear, Su Zhan said softly and got ready, but Natasha shook her head. Instead of letting go of Su Zhan, she pulled him tighter. She even hugged Su Zhan's neck crazily and pressed directly against him. The smell of blood entered his mouth. Su Zhan didn't dare to use too much force for fear of hurting Natasha, but Natasha seemed to be crazy at this time. Maybe the blood stimulated her reason and made her very violent, which made Su Zhan even more nervous. Some can't stand it anymore, just kiss, there is blood here, this is too harsh. Chapter 0071 Make a lot of money. Natasha's emotions seemed to be a little out of control. Well, Su-Jean admitted that his emotions were gradually out of control. Although the berserker's cane did not trigger his fear, the manic mood did not completely disappear. It was just calmed and suppressed. Under Natasha's almost crazy initiative, the restlessness seemed to be regained. It was like igniting, especially the faint smell of blood, which stimulated Su-Jean's emotions, make him feel crazy, make him want to be hysterical. I don't know who started it first. The clothes are rolling and fading away in the madness, reason has long been forgotten, and I have to admit that crazy Natasha is really a good rhythm player. Aha! Accompanied by a groan of pain, I finally, forgot everything. I don't know how long it has been. Time seemed completely meaningless at this time. After being exhausted, the two hugged each other and fell into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, Su-Jean was awakened by the noisy sound of the street outside. He opened his hazy sleepy eyes and saw the dazzling sunlight shining through the window, flickering as the curtains swung. Squinting his eyes slightly and gradually getting used to it, Su-Jean realized that he was lying next to him alone, very white and soft. Turning his head, Su-Jean saw Natasha sleeping soundly. Memories gradually emerged. Looking at Natasha, who was sleeping and thinking, it was difficult to connect her with the crazy appearance last night. Fear is indeed terrible. Natasha, who is so strong, can't help but lose control of her emotions. Looking at the blood stain still remaining on the corner of Natasha's mouth, Su-Jean shook his head gently and prepared to go down, but he was shocked to find that there was a touch of bright red on the bed sheets. Su-Jean was stunned for a moment. No way. Su-Jean muttered. He didn't expect Natasha, who was so crazy last night, to be in perfect condition. Does this count as making a lot of money for yourself? Thinking about the madness last night and looking at his peaceful face now, Su-Jean really didn't know what to say other than making a lot of money. Does this push the widowed sister away? No, this should be regarded as being pushed by the widowed sister, right? Shaking his head, Su-Jean gently took Natasha's hand away from his body, then stood up and walked quietly to the bathroom. By the time he finished his shower and came out dressed, Natasha was already awake and looking out the window with her head tilted, as if she was feeling the warmth of the sun. You're awake, are you going to eat something, or should you continue to rest? Su-Jean came over and asked. Where's the stuff? Natasha turned around and asked. Su-Jean was speechless. Is this the first thing you asked when you woke up? Otherwise? Should I ask you how you felt yesterday? Well, I admit that yesterday's feeling was a bit complicated for me. I don't know how to comment, but at least I am sure it was very unforgettable. Natasha said slowly. She was indeed out of control emotionally yesterday, but that didn't mean she didn't know or remember anything. Natasha was not annoyed about this accident. It could be said that it was not that difficult to accept it. Maybe he had such a premonition from the first time he met Su-Jean. That's pretty much it. After hearing what Natasha said, Su-Jean nodded with satisfaction. His attitude at the beginning did make him a little depressed. Should he be so understated? When you wake up, ask directly about the mission. He is obviously a novice, but he pretends to be experienced and nonchalant. This made Su-Jean quite unhappy. You don't have to worry about things. Your main task today is to have a good rest. Whether it's physically, or mentally, you need to rest now. Su-Jean came to Natasha's side and said softly. Natasha hesitated. This was her mission after all. However, when she saw Su-Jean's concerned eyes and expression that were a little domineering, she couldn't help but nod in agreement. What are you thinking about? Seeing Natasha suddenly calm down obediently, Su-Jean asked curiously. Natasha flipped her hair, shook her head slightly, and said with a soft smile, It's nothing. I suddenly felt that this is the feeling of someone caring. It's great. You will get used to it in the future, because I will always be by your side. Su-Jean chuckled. I didn't expect that what I said last night would come true. It was truly an unforgettable night. It seems that I also have the ability to predict the future. Natasha couldn't help laughing when she thought of her teasing to Su-Jean yesterday. Su-Jean also laughed. Chapter 56. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The laughter was silent, but very sweet. What about Sky? Natasha suddenly tilted her head and asked Su-Jean with interest. What do you think? Su-Jean didn't answer, and he didn't seem nervous. He asked with a smile. There really isn't anything good about a man. Natasha shook her head and pouted. Sky is my girlfriend, I like her. As for you, you are my woman now, I like you very much, and I am also very fascinated by you. It is impossible for me to give up any of them, so the easiest way is of course I want both. Anyway, nowadays, rich and powerful people basically have more than one woman, right? I can still be considered rich and powerful if I can do it, right? As long as my relationship with you is right and true, isn't that okay? Su-Jean smiled and said, of course, you can refuse, but I am a Chinese, and a traditional Chinese, so whether you want it or not, you must be mine. Woman. Tradition. Do you think you are being carefree? In ancient China, the emperor, that is, the king, had 3 wives and 4 concubines, and a harem. So, this is really a tradition. Su-Jean said seriously. Natasha also knew this, but she didn't expect that Su-Jean would use this as a reason. Emperor, king? Is this your goal? Natasha was suddenly curious and asked, what if I find another man? I will kill whoever you are looking for. Su-Jean said very calmly, but Natasha had no doubt about the firmness in his tone. This was definitely not a joke. All right, you win. Natasha shrugged her shoulders. I'm not planning to find a man anyway, you are enough. However, my current situation is not that bad, so you should tell me what's going on, right? The Berserker's cane is an Asgardian thing. It can induce people's fear, anger, and increase their strength. This is only 1/3 of the cane. I'm going to find the other 2 parts. And stay by yourself? Natasha asked. Su-Jean smiled, yes, because I may be the only one who is not affected. Chapter 0072 Berserker Cane. I think Nick Fury regrets asking me to complete this mission. Now that Su-Jean said this, Natasha knew that this Berserker cane was beyond the reach of S.H.I.E.L.D., but she didn't care too much. Although she belonged to S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers, it was obvious that now Su-Jean have a closer relationship with her. What's more, once everything is in Su-Jean's hands, it might not be that easy to get it back. Natasha was very curious, where did Su-Jean put his cane? He remembered that he did not leave yesterday, and she did not see the cane. Su-Jean smiled and said, if he has any objections, you can ask him to come to me. As for now, you'd better rest honestly. Okay. Natasha's physical fitness is still good. This is the first time she has been crazy all night, and now she only feels a slight pain. However, she liked Su-Jean's concern very much. Seeing Natasha obediently, Su-Jean smiled happily. This cane is only part of it, right? Do you know where the remaining part is? Are you really not affected? Natasha leaned on Su-Jean and shook her body slightly. Now that she thinks about it, that kind of fear, the feeling still made her uncomfortable. Feeling Natasha's emotional changes, Su-Jean gently patted her shoulder and said softly, the cane is divided into 3 sections. I also know the locations of the other 2 sections. I will look for you when you feel better. As for the impact, it is still a little bit. When I hold the cane, the anger in my heart will be stronger, but the impact is not big. That's good. Natasha breathed a sigh of relief. She knew how strong the influence was and how painful it was, and she didn't want Su-Jean to be like her. The 2 stayed in the room until the afternoon, and Natasha left after she felt better. When leaving, the owner of the small hotel looked at Su-Jean with a strange look in his eyes. It was obvious that the unscrupulous and crazy owner last night also heard it. After leaving the hotel, the 2 found a place to eat something. Are you going back to S.H.I.E.L.D., or are you coming with me? After eating, Su-Jean asked Natasha. Are you going to find the rest of the cane? Yes, since you already have part of it, let's find the rest so that others don't get it and cause trouble. What happens next? Natasha asked again. Su-Jean thought for a while and said, I should build a base later. My first priority now is to build the base. Then I won't go with you. I'll go back to S.H.I.E.L.D. Okay, don't go on missions during this period and have a good rest. After the two kissed goodbye, Su-Jean set out to find the remaining parts of the cane. It may be difficult for others to find the remaining two parts. After all, the cane has been hidden on the earth for a long time, and it was only discovered now that it has so many secrets. But for Su-Jean, it really wasn't that difficult. He knew the hiding place, although the two places were far away. Su-Jean flew all the way and found the two canes in less than half a day. He took out the three canes and placed them on the ground. The canes connected with each other and generated attraction. The combination comes together. The shape is similar to Loki's scepter, but it is relatively simple and not as gorgeous. Holding the cane in both hands, anger suddenly arose, and the power became stronger. There was a faint feeling of surging out, wanting to vent and destroy everything. Su-Jean slowly controlled his emotions and started to wave. It doesn't seem to go very smoothly. Su-Jean frowned slightly. He was not very used to using long weapons such as canes and guns. On the contrary, when the cane was separated, it became easier for him to hold the two parts. Retracting the berserker's cane to the system space, he clenched his fists with both hands, and two black tang knives soon appeared, body swaying, hands waving. Su-Jean nodded with satisfaction. Sure enough, the two-handed knife was much easier to use. However, whether it is a pair of swords transformed from ether particles or a pair of swords transformed from a lamp ring, although they are very powerful, they have no amplifying effect. Considering the increased power brought by the berserker's cane, it's a pity to give up like this. It seems that we still have to find him, Su-Jean muttered. Originally he had no intention of finding the owner of the berserker's staff, an Asgardian hiding on the earth. This Asgardian was not only a member of the berserkers, but also a blacksmith, the blacksmith of Asgard. Su-Jean's purpose in finding him was to hope that he could change the berserker's cane into a pair of swords, which would be more convenient and powerful. Su-Jean remembered that he seemed to be a professor at a university in Seville. An Asgardian who loves life on Earth. By the time Su-Jean arrived at Seville, night had fallen quietly. He only knew that this Asgardian was called Elliot Randolph and that he was a professor at the university, but he didn't know where he lived. At this time, it was obvious that he couldn't be in school. However, it is not difficult to find out his address. Su-Jean called Sky and gave him Elliot Randolph's information. Soon, Sky had found his address. Chapter 57. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Elliot Randolph was a wealthy man. After all, after living on Earth for so many years, although he is usually very low-key, he knows how to enjoy life. The luxurious villa looks like it's worth a lot of money. At this time, waves of high-pitched female voices came from the master bedroom of the villa. Standing at the door, Su-Jean was really depressed. You really know how to enjoy life. Su-Jean shook his head and knocked gently on the door. There was a sudden knock on the door, startling the two people in the room. The woman stopped and asked the fat middle-aged man doubtfully, "Is there anyone else in your family?" Elliot Randolph shook his head. "Maybe, there are guests." "My dear, let me go out and take a look." After speaking, Elliot Randolph put on his clothes and opened the door warily. "Who are you?" Looking at the young man at the bedroom door, Elliot Randolph frowned slightly. "This seems to be my home, and I didn't invite you." "This is indeed your home, but it is also the Earth, so, you are an uninvited outsider just like me, aren't you?" Su-Jean said with a smile. Elliot Randolph's expression he changed instantly, shook his head and said, "I don't know what you are talking about. Please leave my house now, otherwise, I will call the police." "Are you sure, you want to call the police?" Su-Jean chuckled, and the berserker cane suddenly appeared in his hand. Chapter 0073 The Blacksmith of Asgard. "What's this?" Elliot Randolph looked at Su-Jean with a puzzled expression, as if he didn't recognize him. Su-Jean smiled softly. "Professor Elliot Randolph, now that I'm here and have taken out this thing, wouldn't it be a bit hypocritical for you to keep pretending?" Elliot Randolph hesitated for a moment, frowned and asked, "Who are you?" "My name is Sue Jean. I think we can talk, right?" "Good." Elliot Randolph responded calmly, his previous surprise and doubts disappeared, and he turned and entered the bedroom. After a while, a woman came out of the bedroom. She looked a little unhappy, glanced at Sue Jean, and then left the villa. "Sorry for disturbing your good business." After the woman left, Sue Jean shrugged apologetically towards Elliot Randolph. Elliot Randolph stared at Sue Jean with some surprise. Were you not affected?" That he noticed that Sue Jean had been holding the berserker cane. He knew the power of the cane better than anyone else. Seeing that Sue Jean did not go crazy, he couldn't help but be a little curious. Even he, an Asgardian, could not help but influenced. "If it had any impact, I think I wouldn't come to you," Sue Jean said with a smile. Elliot Randolph nodded and asked, "So, you know my identity?" "I'm curious, how did you know?" "I have been to Asgard and dealt with the Dark Elves. If you are well informed, you should know that the Dark Elf spaceship now belongs to me," Sue Jean said lightly. Elliot Randolph's eyes widened in surprise and disbelief. "This is impossible. The Dark Elves are extremely powerful. They have been lurking and trying to come back. Unless they all die in battle, otherwise, you can't get their spaceship. That's about it. I killed Molesky. Now there is only one Dark Elf left, and he has surrendered to me. I need to calm down." Elliot Randolph turned around and walked to the wine cabinet and poured 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to Sue Jean and drank the other in one gulp. After a while, he slowly said, "It seems that my information is indeed not well informed." "You? Who are you?" "It is absolutely impossible for ordinary Earthlings to defeat the Dark Elves." "For me, nothing is impossible." Sue Jean chuckled and controlled the ether particles to float around him. Under the surprised gaze of Elliot Randolph, he finally transformed into a battle suit and attached it to his body. "This is an ether particle." All the ether particles were obtained by Sue Jean, and Elliot Randolph finally believed that the Dark Elves had been destroyed by him. "Since you have ether particles, the berserker's cane should be of no use to you." "I don't understand. Why did you come to me?" Elliot Randolph asked in a low voice. "If I remember correctly, you were a blacksmith before, right? I want you to help me transform the berserker's cane and forge it into a pair of swords." As Sue Jean finished his words, he had already transformed into a pair of swords. "Looks like." Elliot Randolph was surprised. How did he know his identity and that he was a blacksmith? He had always hidden his identity. Even Asgard didn't know of his existence and thought he had been killed. "As long as you are willing to help me, I will help you keep your secret and hide your identity. You must know that I am very familiar with Asgard," Sue Jean said with a smile as he narrowed his eyes, but that smile was clearly threatening to Elliot Randolph. "I really want to help you, but I can't." Elliot Randolph sighed, "There are not enough materials. If you want a single sword, maybe you can, but a double sword is definitely not enough." "Isn't it enough?" Sue Jean frowned slightly, and suddenly with a thought in his mind, he took out something from the system space. "What about this? Is this enough?" Elliot Randolph looked down. "Is this Asgard's armor? Where did you get it?" "I told you, I'm very familiar with Asgard," Sue Jean said with a smile and asked. "Can the materials for this armor be used?" "It's possible. Asgard's weapons and armor are basically made of the same material. It should be enough to forge them into double swords. But if they are forged into double swords, I'm afraid the magic inside will change," Elioteris Randolph said with a frown. "What changes?" What Sue Jean values is that it can increase anger and strength. If this effect is lost, it is not as good as the double swords transformed from ether particles. If it is changed to double swords, the magic will be divided into two, and the effect will naturally be weakened to a certain extent. In fact, the principle of this magic is very simple. It makes people fear and generate anger, so, unless you can find something similar otherwise, the effect may not be as good as the original one. Elliot Randolph explained. Fear, anger. Su-Jean walked to the sofa, put the berserker's cane aside, then drank from the wine glass, bowing his head in thought. Elliot Randolph said nothing or interrupted. Actually, I have something that should meet your requirements, but this thing is very dangerous, even if you are an Asgardian. Su-Jean drank the wine in one gulp and said slowly, I have a crystal that can absorb the power of fear. If it is accidentally infected, it will become an apostle of fear. What is it? Take it out and see. Elliot Randolph had never heard of anything similar and was a little curious. At the same time, he also had strong confidence in himself. After all, he is an Asgardian. Su-Jean took out the fear crystal, a small, orange crystal. Chapter 58. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. It doesn't look like anything special, however. Elliot Randolph suddenly raised his eyebrows and said cautiously, How strange, I can feel the power contained in this crystal. It makes me feel scared. I am sure that it can kill me. Good stuff. What a good thing. I suddenly had an idea. Elliot Randolph was a little excited and said excitedly, Don't you want 2 knives? I can fuse this crystal into one of the knives to absorb fear. The other knife can leave a complete magic, through the absorbed fear, increases anger and strength. One absorbs and the other releases. This is quite interesting. Su-Jean raised the corners of his mouth and said with a smile, Chapter 0074, Being Attacked. That's right, one absorption and one release will not only not affect the effect of magic, but the two will complement each other and double their power. Elliot Randolph said excitedly, as a blacksmith, although he doesn't like his profession, he is still very excited to be able to forge such a weapon. You sure? At least 70% sure. Elliot Randolph said firmly. Okay, I'll leave these things to you. How long will it take to heal? It's hard to say. I need to prepare. Elliot Randolph was not sure of this, after all he had not been a blacksmith for many years. I'll leave the stuff here with you, and you'll let me know when it's ready. Of course, I think. I don't have to worry about you taking the opportunity to run away, right? Su-Jean asked with a smile. Elliot Randolph said with a wry smile, Even if I want to run, I have nowhere to run. That's hard work. Su-Jean patted Elliot Randolph on the shoulder and said, I know you don't want to go back to Asgard and prefer life on Earth. As long as you help me build a pair of swords, I can guarantee that even Asgard, even if the Germans find you, I won't let them take you away. Of course, it's not just the Asgardians. Thanks. Of course, Elliot Randolph firmly believed in the guarantee given by a strong man who could kill Maleski, destroy the Dark Elves, and even ether particles. For so many years, he has lived a low-key and happy life, but he has always been worried and full of worries. Now, he can finally breathe a sigh of relief. Therefore, Elliot Randolph now not only does not blame Su-Jean for suddenly coming to him and asking him to build weapons, but he is very happy and grateful. Su-Jean left his number with Elliot Randolph and then left his house. He believed that Elliot Randolph would help him build a good weapon as soon as possible. One absorbs and one releases. Su-Jean was really looking forward to what kind of power the double swords would have after they were built. Originally, he planned to absorb the fear crystal, but if it was more useful on the dual swords, that would be great. Anyway, the power of fear absorbed is ultimately under your control, so use it. I really made a lot of money from this sudden drinking trip. Not only has she earned a Natasha, but she will also soon have super powerful weapons. He is in a good mood now. While soaring slowly in the sky, enjoying the beauty of the night sky, I was thinking about my next plan. He is not worried about the big plan, and the layout is very simple. He wants to make his name as much as possible and expand his influence and power. But personally, he has some ideas. Calculate his abilities: Extremis Virus, Fire Control Ability, Flame Ability, Future Prediction, Tracking, Telekinesis, Mental Control, Sound Waves. It can be said that there are many abilities. This is internal. What about external? Ether Particles. Green Light Ring, Box of Ice. There is also a Gravity Particle, whether it's internal abilities or external things, they are all extremely strong now. However, this is just the surface. Many abilities are useless and of little use. His attack methods are mainly fire ability and telekinesis. As for the external equipment, the only ones that can be used now are ether particles and light rings, which are also called ether light rings. The icebox cannot be used for the time being, at least not in the Marvel world, otherwise Odin must know that he took it away. For the time being, he does not want to be an enemy of Odin or Asgard. Gravity particles have no reaction, not to mention that even if there is a reaction, it is nothing more than an ability. The dual knives of fear should be good, but they are not available yet. So strictly speaking, his fighting ability is not strong, and his fighting skills are even more lacking. If you encounter someone who is weaker than yourself, you can naturally easily solve it with your ability. But if you encounter someone who is stronger than yourself, you will be at a disadvantage. Moreover, these abilities can be developed in depth. He now has a new dungeon plane that has not yet been determined. He can also erase a dungeon plane and choose a new one. In the latter case, he must choose a DC world with a similar timeline and the same background. Make good use of these two copies. Su-Jean was thinking about the choice of dungeon when he suddenly felt something rushing towards him in the distance. As soon as he turned around to look, he felt a strong wind rushing towards him, knocking him to the ground in an instant. Got out. Someone attacked me. Su-Jean was hit and his blood boiled, but he was not injured. After all, he was protected by the energy of the light ring, but it was so sudden that he didn't expect it. After a moment, he stabilized his body and flew back quickly. Tornado. It turned out to be a tornado. Su-Jean was a little stunned when he looked at the tornado that was rapidly selecting not far away, but then he felt relieved. Because he saw a person in the tornado, to be precise, just the upper body of a person. His lower body merged with the tornado. It was obvious, this tornado was caused by him. It's interesting. Su-Jean thought of a person, the mutant tornado, who could release and control tornadoes. He was a villain who often dealt with Spider-Man and Ant-Man. He was a rather troublesome guy. But, how did this guy find me? Isn't he a loner? Later, it seems that he followed the Red Skull. How could he sneak attack him for no reason? But it doesn't matter. Since he dared to sneak attack on him, he would have to pay the price. As for the reason, it's not too late to ask later. Su-Jean was not that good-tempered. He was attacked by someone for no reason, and then he had to ask the reason slowly. With a sound of bang. A sound barrier seemed to appear under his feet. Immediately after, Su-Jean came to the front of the tornado, waved his hand, and a huge palm appeared out of thin air and grabbed it directly towards the tornado. The wind was strong and the speed of the tornado was very fast. Looking at the huge palm that suddenly appeared, the whirlwind under his feet accelerated instantly and flew away. After Can-Can dodged, several flames appeared in front of him. He quickly accelerated the wind in an attempt to extinguish the flames. However, instead of extinguishing the flames, they caught the wind and intensified. Chapter 59. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. The tornado was startled, but he was smart and knew that his wind could not extinguish the flames, so he used his skill to blow the flames away. Slightly relieved, Tornado was about to continue his attack when he suddenly saw a huge fist appearing in front of him. Ah! With a scream, the tornado was knocked to the ground and flew out. Come back to me, Su-Jean sneered, and his huge fist instantly extended, turned into a rope, and chased the tornado. Chapter 0075. Thank you for delivering the goods to your door. Tornado was a little stunned, his head was dizzy, the cyclone in his lower body disappeared, and the whole person fell from the air. Suddenly, the dark green rope wrapped around Tornado's body and pulled him over instantly. With this entanglement and tug, the tornado gradually woke up, and its lower body turned into a whirlwind again and tried to break free. However, this is a rope made of the energy of the etheric lamp ring. How can it be broken away so easily? The huge force caused the tornado to fly toward Su-Jean. He clearly saw that he was getting closer and closer to a fist filled with flames. No. Listen to me first. Tornado shouted, trying to make Su Zhan stop. Su Zhan smiled coldly and suddenly punched, boom. The fist was accompanied by flames and hit Tornado's face directly. You can clearly see that Tornado's face was dented by the punch, and then the whole person was hit and flew out. The blood turned into a red rainbow in the air. Su Zhan used his left hand to manipulate the rope to pull him back, and then punched with ease, boom. Boom. The tornado was like a sandbag, being knocked away and then pulled back. At first, he tried to resist and struggle, but after a few punches, he immediately withered. What does it mean to have a face full of peach blossoms? That's it. Pulling him back again, the rope turned into a huge hand, holding him in the middle, and suspended him in front of Su Zhan. Seeing the dying and embarrassed Tornado, Su Zhan said slowly, "You seem to have something to say just now. What you wanted to say can be said now. What nonsense are you talking about now?" Tornado couldn't help roaring in his heart, "The beating is over, is there any need to talk now? Don't you have anything to say? Then don't say it forever." Su Zhan raised the corners of his mouth, and the ether particles gradually condensed and turned into the head of a gun, sharp and depressing, and slowly stretched towards the Tornado's head. Wait, I have something to say." Tornado was suddenly startled and shouted hurriedly. "Magneto asked me to come." The gun tip stopped at Tornado's forehead, and he could feel that there seemed to be black and red particles moving rapidly. He could feel that as long as he moved a little, this thing would pierce his head cleanly. He swallowed subconsciously and said timidly, "Magneto asked me to come." "Magneto?" Su Zhan muttered, and his eyes suddenly changed, turning extremely dark in an instant. This change surprised Tornado, and then he felt confused. "Are you from the Mutant Brotherhood? Why did Magneto ask you to come?" "Yes, I just joined the Mutant Brotherhood. Magneto said that you killed Pyro John, so let me kill you. If I succeed, let me become a core member of the Mutant Brotherhood. If I fail, then say Magneto wants to see you," Tornado whispered. What a cunning old man, this Tornado is just cannon fodder. He definitely doesn't know his own strength, so he foolishly comes to deal with him. If he succeeds, Magneto will be able to avenge his men, gain both loyalty and a good reputation. If that fails, asking yourself to meet may be an attempt to win over yourself. Tornado doesn't know, but Magneto definitely knows about his devouring ability. If Tornado fails, will he let go of his ability? Obviously it won't, so this Tornado is just cannon fodder. But, John is dead. It swallowed up his ability and he was injured, but it didn't kill him because of Sky. Did he commit suicide? Or? Su Zhan thought of a possibility. Magneto is not a soft-hearted person, he is absolutely cruel. In his philosophy, there is only usefulness or uselessness, but there is no emotion. Now that John has lost his powers, Magneto will never care about him. If Magneto killed John and blamed it on himself, he could make a big deal out of it. The more he thought about it, the more Su Zhan felt it was possible. Squinting his eyes slightly, Su Zhan used his precognition ability to try to sense the future. Unfortunately, this ability did not work. What's wrong with me? What did you do to me? Tornado suddenly woke up and shouted towards Su Zhan in horror. Mutants are indeed stronger than superpowers who obtain superpowers through potions. They woke up so quickly. Su Zhan said secretly, then looked at the Tornado and said, "Thank you." "Thank you? You said thank you to me?" Tornado was stunned, not understanding why Su Zhan suddenly thanked him. Why? Why did you say thank you to me? Because of your ability. Before, I was thinking about how to develop my ability and make it stronger. I didn't expect that you would bring your ability to me. I accepted your ability. Anyway, dead people don't need abilities. Isn't it? Su Zhan smiled and stretched out his hand towards him. What are you talking about? What kind of abilities are delivered to your door? What do you want to do? No. Don't. Tornado yelled in horror but couldn't stop him at all. Su Zhan put his hand on his body and instantly began to devour his abilities. The Tornado struggled again, and finally calmed down. The energy of the etheric lamp ring suddenly disappeared, and the tornado fell instantly. Su Zhan waved his hand towards him, and the flames shot out. He heard a boom, and the flames hit the tornado. The tornado exploded instantly like a firework, with sparks dotted, falling and scattering, and finally extinguished and disappeared, and the tornado has also been reduced to ashes, not even a scrap is left. Is this the ability of wind? It can not only control wind, but also create wind. Yes, it's really good. If it is combined with the ability of fire, it can greatly increase the power of fire. Ignoring the dissipated tornado, Su Zhan quietly sensed the ability to create wind. Great. Better than expected. I don't know what tornado is thinking. I guess he can't fly, so he can only move his lower body at high speed to create a tornado. Although the effect is good, the shape is too awkward. Chapter 60. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Su Zhan tried to shake his arms slightly, and soon all the surrounding wind was gathered, forming a small tornado. Then, Su Zhan slowly turned into flames, and the red flames gradually merged with the white whirlwind. With a thought, Su Zhan increased the temperature. Almost in an instant, the flames had reached the temperature of a supernova. Chapter 0076 Morning Happiness. The temperature this time seems to be higher than last time. Su Zhan felt the change in temperature on his arm, and clearly felt that not only was the temperature rising very quickly, reaching the temperature of a supernova almost instantly, but the temperature itself was also higher than the last time he dealt with the dark elf Molesky. Higher, this wind's ability is really good. Su Zhan nodded with satisfaction, then looked around. Surrounded by the dark night sky and the bustling city below, no one else was seen. It seems that Tornado is the only one here, so it won't be long before Magneto knows that Tornado is dead, and he will naturally take action. Whoosh. There was a sound of breaking through the sky, and Su Zhan instantly disappeared into the night sky. Returning to the West Coast Island base, Su Zhan entered the spacecraft and returned to his room. After taking a shower, Su Zhan lay down and began to swallow ether particles. This has become a required course for him every day. His body can swallow any ability or energy without causing side effects, but for example, his body is a container or water tank, and ability energy is water. If there is too much water, problems will naturally arise if it exceeds the capacity of the container. Therefore, he cannot devour it without any scruples. Whether it is quantity or quality, there are certain restrictions in this regard. However, after this period of continuous devouring, Su Zhan could feel that the capacity of his container or water tank had increased. He believed that given time, he would be able to devour even the most powerful abilities and energies. Therefore, it can be said that Su Zhan is devouring ether particles not only for the ether particles, but also to exercise his swallowing ability. 2 hours later, Su Zhan felt a little saturated for the time being, so he stopped to rest. A dreamless night. In his sleep, Su Zhan vaguely seemed to hear a voice. He squinted and opened his eyes. What he saw was a colorful figure with perfect curves. Su Zhan suddenly became energetic when he saw it. As a man, my reaction is stronger in the morning, but now that I see such a visually impactful scene, it becomes even stronger. Huan turned around and was stunned for a moment when he looked at Su Zhan, who was staring straight at him. The corners of his eyes subconsciously caught a glimpse of a towering place on the quilt. His face turned slightly red, but the corners of his mouth subconsciously raised. I thought you didn't like me. Huan said proudly in his heart, and then said with a smile, Boss, you're awake, breakfast has been prepared for you. Suddenly I feel so happy. When I opened my eyes in the morning, I not only saw delicious food, but also beautiful women. Su Zhan said with a smile and sat up. Twinkle chuckled, Boss, among the women around you, I am not considered a beauty. Who said that? You also know that I am Chinese. Although the ocean horse is indeed good and very charming, but similarly, the Oriental style is more in line with my aesthetics. After all, I have been used to it since I was a child. Yes. Su Zhan said with a smile. Huan Shuang pursed her lips and smiled. I'm going to go out to work first. Well, go ahead, I'll be down in a minute. After Huan left, Su-Jean had breakfast, washed up, and then followed him down. Little Pepper was wearing a helmet and supervising the work on the construction site. She seemed to be doing a decent job. Su-Jean went over to say hello to her, chatted for a while and asked her if she was used to it, and then joined in. After working hard all morning, Su-Jean was about to take a break when he suddenly heard the phone ring. When he took it out, Sky was slightly surprised. "Honey, do you miss me?" After answering the phone, Su-Jean asked with a smile. "Of course, can you come back?" Sky said. "Now. If you're not in a hurry, how about later? I'm right here at the base. When work stops in the evening, I'll go back to find you. How about we find a place to eat?" Su-Jean said softly. "I'm afraid not. Well, we have a mission and it's a bit tricky, so Coulson asked me to inform you." Sky explained helplessly. "It turns out you have a mission. I thought you really missed me." Su-Jean said, pretending to be angry. Sky hurriedly explained, "Of course I really miss you, but I know you are very busy now, so I am afraid of disturbing you." Okay, I'm teasing you, idiot." "Okay, I'll go over right now," Su-Jean said with a smile, hung up the phone and told Shuang that he was leaving, then took off into the air. Well, the surrounding workers are already used to it. Arriving on the shield plane, Su-Jean saw Sky waiting for him early. He smiled and stretched out his hand, and Sky jumped directly into his arms. After kissing her on the face, Su-Jean hugged her and went to the conference room. In the conference room, Coulson, May, Simmons, and Fitz were all there. Besides them, there was one other person, Michael. It was the centipede warrior injected with the centipede virus that he and Sky dealt with when they first became SHIELD consultants. At that time, he was almost out of control and almost hurt Sky. He knocked him out and handed him over to SHIELD. As for what happened next, he didn't interfere. This Michael will also be a character with a name in the future, a half-human, half-machine death warrior. Of course, he is not a death warrior yet. He is just a newbie super soldier who has stabilized the centipede virus and is targeting Captain America. "Remember me?" Su-Jean first nodded towards the others, then asked Michael with a smile. Michael smiled heartily and nodded. "Of course I remember. If you hadn't knocked me out, I might have lost control. You saved my life and my life. Also, I'm sorry, at that time I lost control and almost hurt Sky." "Don't be sorry, you should be glad that it was just a close call." Su-Jean said with a smile. If Michael had really hurt Sky at that time, Su-Jean would have killed him directly regardless of whether he would become a death warrior in the future. "Okay, let me talk about this mission. The situation is not so optimistic." Coulson clapped his hands, attracted attention, and talked about this mission. Before Su-Jean arrived, the others already knew the detailed goals of the mission, and even called Michael over to let him participate. The only one who was not clear about it was Su-Jean. Of course, this is what they thought. In fact, although Su-Jean didn't know some of the details of this mission, he knew more about others than Coulson and the others. Chapter 0077 Different Levels. Coulson told Su-Jean in detail about the information and clues of the mission. 3 people, to be precise, 3 centipede warriors broke into the federal prison and rescued one person within 2 minutes, a former general named Edison Wave. Is a strategic expert. The first task this time is to find Bo and the centipede warriors. Su-Jean was really interested now. He had destroyed one of the centipede warriors' bases, and because of his own fault, they didn't get Shinharan or his platelets to stabilize the centipede virus. Now it seems that they have found another way. Can you find where he is?